Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and today I'm going to share with you my PlayStation 3 game collection. It's a little over 170 games, and it consists of a bunch of awesome games, some hidden gems, and yes, even some clunkers that maybe you can give me some feedback on. I mean, Haze was a huge disappointment, right? Let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to start with some of the obvious titles, and of course the Uncharted games are, well, they were some of the best that you could get on the PlayStation 3. That's where the series started. But in my heart, oh man, Uncharted 2 is just an absolute masterpiece. They got everything right in this game. The graphics, the characters, the level design. It's just such a great game, and I still look back fondly on it today. But the Ratchet Clank series on the PlayStation 3 was a bit of a hit and miss, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because they had such great games on the PlayStation 2 that when it came over to the PlayStation 3, I thought they were okay, but maybe a little bit of burnout kind of happened when these games got released. They're not terrible, but they're not great or memorable, at least to me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Of course, I have to mention Journey, Little Big Planet 2, as well as The Last of Us. Again, these are some of the classics that came out on the PlayStation 3 and that I really, really enjoyed. Now, here's some games that support the PlayStation Move controller. Now, I'll admit I was really late to getting a Move controller. It wasn't until a friend of mine told me that, hey, you know, you like light gun games, you got to get a Move controller because there are a handful of games that kind of support that. And so Time Crisis Raising Storm is one of those. You know, if you are missing classic Time Crisis style first-person shooting, you know, that arcade style, this is a really cool version of that. It's technically a spin-off, but it does come bundled, or it has on the disc Time Crisis 4. So I thought that was really cool. And then SOCOM 4 is a bit of a heartbreak for me because I loved SOCOM 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2. And man, I was looking forward to this game. It came out, and the single player, which I really, really enjoy doing, was just not very good. But I got it because it does support the PlayStation Move. So you can actually, you know, play this not really like a light gun game, but you know, kind of get that feeling of holding a rifle. I thought that was kind of cool at the time. But my heart is broken here because, again, the game itself just wasn't that great. Here's some other games that I put a lot of time into on my PlayStation 3. Some games that kind of go under the radar a little bit, including Magen and the Forsaken Kingdom. This is a game that doesn't really get a lot of love, and I probably shared it in a Hidden Gems video years ago. Just a really cool kind of third-person platforming game, but it's really heavy on puzzles, has a really cool art style. Again, just a game that nobody talks about, as well as 3D Dot Game Heroes. Now, if you're looking at the gameplay footage here, you'll notice that it really resembles classic Legend of Zelda style gameplay, but it has that really cool 3D tilt shift look to it, where it kind of looks like everything's made out of bricks. It has such a cool art style. Definitely a really fun game. So if you like classic Zelda games, you should definitely give this a go. Here's another game that has a fantastic art style. That's El Shaddai. I originally learned about this game from Pete Dorr when we were on the All Gen Gamers podcast, because he wouldn't shut up about this game. And he was absolutely right. It's such a beautiful game. You guys are seeing the gameplay footage here. 3D action game, just amazing looking game and super fun. As well as Tornado Outbreak. This was such a surprise when I discovered this game because I love Katamari Damacy, that classic game where you're rolling up the ball and collecting stuff in an environment, in a level, building it up. Well, Tornado Outbreak is exactly like that, except for you are a tornado and you're just getting bigger and bigger and just sucking into the whirlwind here, more and more stuff to the point where you are just taking down buildings and things like that. Definitely a little bit of a sleeper hit, and it's so much fun. Here is the Puppeteer, and this is a game that was exclusive to the PlayStation 3, and again, kind of flew under the radar a bit. It's a platformer, kind of reminds you a little bit of Little Big Planet in its aesthetics. It has this mechanic where you use scissors to navigate and affect the environment or the level design. Yeah, just another really kind of standout game, a little bit quirky. Not a lot of people talk about it, so if you have a PlayStation 3, you should definitely hunt down a copy. I always have some survival horror games in my collection for pretty much every system, and you see a bunch of them that I've got for my PlayStation 3. A lot of these are also available, obviously, on the 360 and also PC. But again, you know, the PlayStation 3 just had a bunch of really great ones here. So many that I played and loved. You actually see the Darkness 2 down there. I used to have a copy of the Darkness 1 and really enjoyed that. Deadly Premonitions, a trippy game. The sequel recently came out on the Switch. I got that as well. And then Dead Space 3 is a game that I intend to play. I bought that probably about a year ago, I think, and I haven't played that since. I love Dead Space 1 and 2, but I haven't played the third one just yet. Of course, I have some Rockstar games, Grand Theft Auto 4, 5, and Red Dead Redemption. But honestly, Max Payne 3 turned out to be a total surprise to me when I first got that game. I think it's because when it came out, it got a lot of hate from some of the original fans of the first two games because this game was a bit of a departure. And I can understand that because I really do like Max Payne 2. But Max Payne 3 is surprisingly fun. It's got great characters, amazing graphics. I love the new location and its style. It's got that edginess to it, and it's got some of the classic gameplay, the bullet time effect. The only thing I think that gets really annoying and really dates the game is that for whatever reason, they went all out on the video effects in that game, where if you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. They have these like crazy video transitions that they do all the time, and it's very distracting. But if you can get past that, I actually do like Max Payne 3 a lot. Here are some open world games that I kind of wanted to group together, but I wanted to point out a game that doesn't get much love anymore and was surprisingly fun when it was released, and that's called the Saboteur. And so here's an open world game created by Pandemic Studios. They're going to be very familiar to people who have played Full Spectrum Warrior, Star Wars Battlefront, Destroy All Humans, the Mercenary series. So they've got a lot of experience programming these open worlds, but this one just had its own look and feel. It was very cool. Yeah, I really dig the visual style in this game. Plus, it was set in the 1940s, which is kind of a little bit different than what you saw at the time. So yeah, if you like open world games and you're looking for something new, this game can be picked up super cheap. Some more random PlayStation 3 games, including some flight simulators there, as well as Under Defeat HD, which is a really cool shooter, and the really excellent Sega Genesis collection. But not many people are talking about You Don't Know Jack. These were such funny trivia games that originally came out on the PC and were just over the top hilarious. Lately, I've been going back and playing some of these older trivia games because it's kind of fun to do that, especially given time. You know, maybe at the time they seem kind of topical, but you go back now and sometimes they're even easier because I think, you know, maybe you just know more about what was going on at the time. I don't know. It's kind of fun to do. So I definitely think that it's pretty cool. They got a You Don't Know Jack on PlayStation 3. Katamari Forever, as well as God of War 3. We've got Risen, a Lego game, Darksiders 2, Metal Gear Rising. But I want to point out Remember Me. So that's a game that, well, I picked it up pretty cheap at the time. And man, this is such an interesting game. I really want to know what you guys think about this because it's by Capcom and you can tell that they put a lot of money into this game. It's got great visuals and the characters and the story is pretty interesting. But for whatever reason, I just could not get into the combat. I guess it definitely felt like a game that could have turned into a pretty cool series. Almost reminds me a little bit of the Deus Ex style games where, again, they're kind of futuristic and cyberpunk, but for whatever reason, it just didn't connect with me. So again, I'd love to know what you guys thought if you've played it down in the comments. And then here is Metal Gear Solid 4, and man, I love this game, and I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it because I think, at this point I'd played a bunch of them already. And at this point, I think I might even played the ones on the PSP, the Metal Gear Acid games. And so I just didn't know if I would be into another Metal Gear game, but I really dug 4. It just, again, sucked me back in with its crazy characters and awesome gameplay and amazing graphics. So yeah, I really dug this one a lot. As well as the Bureau XCOM Declassified. So this game, I kind of feel like is a bit of a hidden gem because I don't feel like it got that much attention when it came out, primarily because I think the name. Most people know XCOM. That's a really well-respected, well-known turn-based strategy game, but they kind of de-emphasized it here, and they had this name called the Bureau. And in many ways, it's kind of similar, but then it's also its own thing. So I don't know. You guys are seeing the gameplay footage here. It's actually a pretty fun game. Yeah, check it out if you're interested. Lollipop Chainsaw. This was a game that got a lot of hype when it was originally announced at E3. Man, you saw a ton of people cosplaying as the main character. What do I say about this game? I love it at times. I love its attitude. I love its idea. But as a beat 'em up, it gets really repetitive and really old very quick. And yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I wanted to like it more than I did. It's funny because I let my buddy Drunken Master Paul play it. He loved it. It was totally up his alley. For me, I just found it a little bit boring as it went along, but I don't know. It's also, I guess I love how bold it is as well. It's just completely over the top and silly. I want to give a shout out to Star Wars The Force Unleashed, simply because this is one of my top 5 Star Wars games of all time. It may actually even be in my top 3. When this game came out, I think it just did everything right. It was just so amazing to play this game at the time. Had a great story, had really interesting gameplay mechanics. I mean, you just felt incredibly powerful trying to bring down a Star Destroyer out of the sky. One of the best moments of any Star Wars game ever. Yeah, I just love it so much. And then I want to mention the reboot of SSX. And man, this is another heartbreak here because, as you guys know, I am fanatical about SSX Tricky and SSX3. But this reboot just didn't have any of the styling and the fun, and I don't know. It just felt like a game that was made by a completely different development team with a completely different design idea for it. It was almost like they're trying to go for something realistic when SSX has never been about that. I don't know. It was just incredibly disappointing. It's not a bad game. I think it's actually a decent game. It's just, it should not have been called SSX. And then here's a bit of a surprise. This, of course, is Star Trek, and this is based on the J.J. Abrams reboot of the movie franchise. And this is actually a pretty decent game. I was really surprised. You know, licensed movie games can often just suck really bad, but honestly, this Star Trek game is not bad at all. It's way better than you might expect. Here's something a bit unusual in my PlayStation 3 collection, actually in my entire collection, and that is a press kit for a PlayStation 3 game called Warhawk. So this was sent to me by a fan of the channel. Now, if you're not familiar with press kits, they are very cool because they are often their own version of a game. They usually come out long before a game comes out. They'll have their own marketing material built in there. They're usually really high quality. They're designed to catch the eye of a reviewer and get them to be excited about a game that's coming up. And so often they are very unique, like I said, really high quality, just kind of neat to collect. And so I'm not one of those collectors that has a bunch of these, but I know people who are, and I'm always fascinated by them. Here is the collector's edition of Killer is Dead by Grasshopper Manufacturer. They made Killer 7 as well as No More Heroes. And this is a hack and slash game that, man, I'm torn about because like some of those other games, I love the visual style. I'll love certain aspects of it. Like some of the gameplay would be really fun. And then other parts are just kind of like, eh. So I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a love-hate relationship with that developer, but I don't know, often I kind of walk away scratching my head a little bit, again, loving the visuals and just being okay with the gameplay. And here's a bit of an oddity in my collection. I found it and I didn't really remember getting this unless it was when it was brand new. But as you can see here, it is Welcome to the PlayStation Network. And in here, it has instructions for basically getting your PlayStation 3 on the network. I guess it's probably on the disc. It's got some sort of firmware for the system itself. The interesting thing about this is that I think it includes a copy of PlayStation Home, which has been long since disabled. So that'd be kind of interesting to reinstall that. And then check this out. Here is the Netflix disc that you would put in your PlayStation 3 if you wanted to stream Netflix. I thought this is pretty hilarious. People forget that at that time you needed a disc to stream your Netflix. How funny. One thing that's pretty cool about this time that you see a lot on the PlayStation 3 is the release of a bunch of compilations like you see here. These are older games and older series that usually would get a remaster in HD, usually up to about 720p, but these are a lot of older games and franchises that got a new life during this generation, and it was so fun to collect these. And so some of the standouts are like this Metal Gear Solid, the Legacy Collection. So in this, you have 8 games on the Blu-ray, including the original MSX2 Metal Gear games that came out, as well as Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. You've got Metal Gear Solid 2, The Sons of Liberty from the PlayStation 2. You've got Snake Eater. You've also got the 4th game, as well as the PSP game in here. So a lot of value. Another one that I really like is the Sly Collection. Those were some great stealth platforming games on the PlayStation 2. It's really a bummer that this franchise kind of died off because it was super cool at the time. As well as the Jak and Daxter collection, of course, remastered for HD. Again, I believe these are probably at 720p, but they look and play great. So this was a really cool collection. I still think the original Jak and Daxter is one of the best platforming games, certainly of the PS2 era. And then here's what I want to point out, and I've mentioned this before, and that is that the Far Cry compilation on the PlayStation 3 has these great 3 games on it. It has Far Cry 2, Far Cry 3, as well as Blood Dragon. Now, this is the only version of the game that had a physical release. This came out on the Xbox 360, but Blood Dragon was a download. So if you care about having a physical version of Blood Dragon, which is a awesome game, you got to get it on the PlayStation 3. One area that the PlayStation 3 really stood out was in RPGs. There were a ton of them released for the console, both Western RPGs as well as Japanese RPGs. And you get a lot of them like this. Now, I think Resonance of Fate also came out on the Xbox 360, but I almost never run into it on that system. It's always the PlayStation 3 version that I see in stores. As well as Folklore, which is a fantastic game that has a great visual style. Love the combat system. The story's really interesting. Another game that I think is kind of a hidden gem. Obviously, a lot of us played Fallout 3. I love that game when it came out. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's the greatest hits version, and it says exclusive to GameStop. So I think it's because it has a bunch of the DLC on the disc, and that's why I wanted it. Such a great game. I also like this release of the Mass Effect trilogy on the PlayStation 3. It's just really nice to have all of them in this special packaging. Again, I don't think the Xbox 360 got a version quite like this. And it's just kind of neat, especially considering that it's my, or one of my all-time favorite RPG series. Obviously, during this generation, we got Final Fantasy XIII, which was a game I was so excited to play when it first came out. I remember running home, popping the disc in, and man, those expectations just got lower and lower as the hours went on. Just could not get into that at all. Admittedly, I haven't played much of Lightning Returns. I've heard that's actually a good game. But then, of course, you see Final Fantasy X and 10-2. Those are the HD remasters. I also have those on Vita. The original Ni no Kuni on PlayStation 3 was just such a breath of fresh air at the time. Amazing visuals. Great gameplay by an amazing developer. And then I have the Steelbook here, which I'm not sure where I got that. I think that might have been given to me by Kinsey. I don't know. She loves this game too. So yeah, definitely a classic. Some more RPGs of the era that I played on the PlayStation 3, and a couple that I kind of want to highlight. The first one being Valkyria Chronicles. This is a game and also a series that really surprised me, both with its really cool visuals as well as its story and its turn-based tactical gameplay and combat. It just really grabbed me. I love these kind of games anyways. I actually prefer turn-based games as opposed to real-time games in general. And this was definitely kind of a throwback, but I just love its style. And again, its characters and its storyline. It was really cool. Another RPG that I'm sure many of you played at the time, that of course is South Park: The Stick of Truth. Man, you know, this game is like being in a South Park episode where you are the star, and it's a full-blown classic RPG, but just takes place in South Park. And at the time, it was definitely a little buggy, maybe even a little janky as far as how it performed, but man, such a fun game. So many sick and wrong moments, laugh out loud funny. Now, the only thing is that I couldn't really get into the sequel for some reason. I'm not sure why. The PlayStation 3 was no slouch when it came to driving games, and you see a bunch of them that I have here, but I want to highlight a few of them, including Wheelman starring Vin Diesel. Now, I'm not going to tell you this is a great game, but I wanted to point it out because it's definitely an ambitious game. So obviously it stars Vin Diesel. It's got this entire story that goes along with it that they actually intended to try to make a motion picture. It just never happened, probably because the game didn't really sell that well. At least that's the impression that I got. However, this game is an interesting mix of, say, Grand Theft Auto open world style game, but also with Burnout and that kind of arcadey over the top action. And again, you mix in Vin Diesel and a story. It's a cheap game and it's completely weird and over the top. So yeah, definitely check it out. And then I want to mention Test Drive Unlimited 2. So I really like the original Test Drive Unlimited, and Test Drive Unlimited 2 just took it to a whole new level because there are 2 islands that you drive on. So you're on Oahu and you're on Ibiza. So you're in Hawaii and you're in Spain. And what's cool about these games is that the terrain or the islands are pretty accurate. They actually use satellite data to try to make them as accurate as possible. And so these are some of those games I like to play where you just drive around and take in the scenery. Plus you've got a bunch of exotic sports cars that are licensed. Yeah, they're really fun. And then here's Twisted Metal. This is a game that I was really looking forward to when it was announced back at E3 for the PlayStation 3 because I really, really enjoyed the original Twisted Metal as well as Twisted Metal Black on the PlayStation 2. Me and Drunken Master Paul, we played that a lot. And when this game came out, kind of landed like a thud. I mean, I don't know. It's just really, it's weird because I couldn't get into it. It seemed like the controls were never quite right. It just seemed like it kind of lost some of the magic. I don't know. I'd love to know in the comments, do you like it? Did you like this version of it? Am I missing something? Because I'd love to know. All right, so here is a bit of a controversial one. This is Ridge Racer Unbounded, and the reason why this one's a bit controversial is because if you are a big fan of the traditional drifting style of those early Ridge Racer games, you're probably not going to like this one. It's primarily because they really did try to take it in a new direction. They got a new developer. They got Bugbear to make this game, which is known for the Flatout series as well as Wreckfest. So this game plays more like a Burnout game. And again, I think at the time people were like, what the heck is this? But if you come into this game looking for something new and different, a little bit interesting, I actually think it's a pretty fun game. It's not perfect, but it's decent. And then of course you can't mention the PlayStation 3 without mentioning the excellent Motorstorm series. These games were so good on the PlayStation 3, all of them here. Now you're wondering maybe why I have 4 there, and that's because the second one there is actually the Japanese version. They got a physical version of the original that has all of the DLC. So I picked it up in Japan. That's pretty cool. But really my favorite actually is Motorstorm Pacific Rift. Pacific Rift really blew me away when I first played it because I just think that the visuals are a little bit more interesting, a little bit more colorful. Plus, it's going to sound dumb now, but I was blown away by the mud physics in this game. It's so dumb, but it just gets incredibly muddy, and it's so cool to just, I don't know, just get your entire vehicle just filthy playing this game. If you like Motorstorm and you like your games a little bit where they have physics involved, yeah, this game is awesome. I still play it today. Now let's move on to some first-person shooters, and we're going to start with the Call of Duty series. For some reason, I just ended up playing all of these games on my PlayStation 3, which is a little odd because my Xbox 360 was actually my system of choice during this generation, but for whatever reason, I got all these games there and I loved them. I love the Call of Duty series during this time, especially Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Black Ops 1 and 2. I just think had amazing single player stories. So much fun, so memorable. Some more first-person shooters on my PlayStation 3. I'm going to highlight a couple of these I think are kind of interesting, starting with 007 Legends. This is an interesting James Bond game where it's kind of like a best of, where they go back in time to create levels on all sorts of different James Bond games, but they're using Daniel Craig in them as the James Bond. So it's a really weird James Bond game. That's kind of why I wanted to highlight it. It's not necessarily great, but it is interesting. One game that is great is Portal 2. Now, I'll admit, I didn't know if they were going to be able to top the first Portal game because I thought that was perfect. But then along comes Portal 2 and you're like, wow, this is even more awesomeness. I loved it from beginning to end. What's cool about this game is that it also has basically this 2-player mode, and you end up being able to screw each other over and just having a great time playing it. Yeah, definite classic. And then I want to mention Haze by Free Radical. The reason why I want to mention this is because I am a diehard drooling Time Splitters fan. I love all 3 games in the series, and when it came time for Haze, man, what happened? I mean, it's not terrible, but it's really bland. And I don't know, it's just kind of a weird game that came out from those guys. And I mean, as far as I can tell, I think it sunk the company, and it's really tragic. So I just want to point that out. I'd love to know what you guys think about Haze down in the comments below. Maybe one day we'll get that Time Splitters Trilogy HD remaster. That's what I want. Some more first-person shooters that I played on the PlayStation 3. A couple of them I want to highlight here. I'm going to start with Killzone II, simply because at the time, Sony released basically a very notorious trailer at E3 that was completely fake. And at the time, nobody knew it. We all kind of suspected it because it just looked too good to be true. And you're seeing a part of it here. And, it's interesting because Killzone 2 ended up turning out to be a fun game, at least in my opinion. Actually, I think it's pretty well made, and it looks great, plays great. And then you have Resistance Fall of Man. Now, the reason why I have these two together is because in my mind, they actually are very similar in look and style. Both of them are kind of futuristic looking, kind of post-apocalyptic. They've got an alien element to it. Plus, the color palettes are often very similar as well. So, both excellent shooters on the PlayStation 3 that I really enjoyed a lot. Actually, the second Resistance game I liked even more. And then, of course, I have my old standbys that I think I have on pretty much every system of that era, including the remasters that come out on current gen. That, of course, is Dishonored, Deus Ex Human Revolution, and BioShock 2. Again, some of my all-time favorite first-person games. Here's some more random PlayStation 3 games in my collection, and just many of these games I picked up super cheap. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, that's one of the great things about collecting for the PlayStation 3 today is that often many of these games can be picked up for $10 or less, $5 or less, it's quite amazing. And sometimes you can find some really weird and quirky ones in there that, yeah, you know, you'll take a chance on it for a couple bucks. I mean, why not? I don't have a lot of fighting games on the PlayStation 3, but here are two pretty good ones here, including Mortal Kombat, which had exclusive content that allowed you to play as Kratos. So of course I had to pick that up. Plus, I really do like the new Mortal Kombat games. I thought that they really got those back on track. So that's why it's here. All right, guys, well, that's a quick look at my PlayStation 3 game collection. And as I mentioned, it's a little over 170 games. But honestly, every time I go into a GameStop or I go into a retro gaming store and I head over to that, you know, PS3 games section, I will always pick up a couple because they're often super cheap and honestly, they play really well even today. And so that's what's really fun about collecting for the PS3. There's just so many games to discover on it and enjoy. But if there are some that I'm missing and you think I need to pick up, please let me know down in the comments below. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.